post all of these on our YouTube channel and on our website. We're about not quite halfway through our series, I think, about halfway. We keep adding more sessions, so it's hard to say. Just give everybody one more second to get in, and we'll get going. So today we're going to focus on highlighting digital skills training needs for specialized workforce populations, veterans, individuals with disabilities, older adults, and formerly incarcerated folks. We did a similar episode 2 weeks ago on rural folks. So we're just continuing to want to bring together our community to discuss our programs, our potential partnerships, and our shifts, and all the fun things that we need to do to build a stronger digital ecosystem here in Maryland and abroad. We've had pretty wide participation in this series from across the country, so that's kind of nice. But we are, in terms of the goals for this, just wanting to connect attendees, with partners, with share promising approaches, common barriers, and collaboration opportunities. So this is very discussion-oriented group, and we'll continue to share as many resources that we develop through these webinars and these discussions as broadly as we can. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and being involved. So we'll get formally started now. Excuse me. Everyone, welcome today. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session, Workforce Development and Digital Skills for Specialized Populations. It's part of our Maryland Digital Equity Coalition Spring Webinar Series, which is focused specifically on advancing digital equity programs across Maryland. My name's Terry Mumm. I'm the Digital Navigation Program Manager for Marylanders Online, which is part of the University of Maryland Extension Program in the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. So we're really fortunate to have the resources and institutionalization of the university to help us promote our goal of enhancing digital access across the state. Today, we're focused again on populations who face compounded digital barriers, which include veterans, older adults, individuals with disabilities, people just impacted folks, and the like. These groups have unique needs and strengths, and we know that digital skills training is one of the most effective tools that we have to advance employment, independence, and inclusion for these groups. So today's economy, over 90% of jobs require at least one digital skill. For many of these communities, the lack of access to training or systems that were never built with them in mind creates a barrier to opportunity. But when people gain confidence using devices, navigation systems, applying for jobs online, they also gain momentum in their career pathways and their daily lives. This is important work that we do. So we've designed today's discussion to be conversational and collaborative. We have a great presentation coming up from Reid at Benton. I'll let him introduce himself because he'll do a better job than me for sure. And then we'll just have some space for questions and discussions after. I did post a few questions in the chat you might think of in this conversation. And before we dive totally in, as Reid does his introduction and gets started, I would love it if everyone in the chat could introduce themselves in the chat, your name, your organization, and one population or digital skill gap that you're particularly focused on right now. Anything else you want to add, feel free to call out your programs, your events, anything. This is definitely don't do that to me, Julie. So, anyway, a collaborative atmosphere. Thanks. I think I did make you co-host. Okay. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Reid. Thank you, Reid, from the Benton Foundation. I always get it wrong. Institute, I knew it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. All right. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Terry. My name is Reid Sharkey. I'm actually originally from Fairfax, Virginia, but don't hold that against me in Maryland. So yeah, thanks. I'm really appreciative of having the opportunity to talk to you all. Let me see if I can share my screen here and get to my slides. I want to get through them fast and furious so we can get to that discussion. But yeah, my job title is community broadband specialist and research associate at the Benton Institute. I work a lot with local governments on our community outreach programs to help them formulate broadband infrastructure plans, typically, and some digital equity related activities, and then get to do some fun research projects on the side, of which this is one. So we'll get talking about that specifically. The population that this report focuses on is veterans, as you can see. Um, we worked on this report last year, came out in November. It was about just under a year's worth of work in planning with the Veterans Affairs Office of Connected Care, which is focused on providing telehealth access to veterans in the VA system. And the plan it came out of sort of a project that we were doing on all of the covered populations, which was looking at all 50 state plans and assessing how that specific covered population's needs were being recorded in each plan and the strategies that were being implemented to meet those needs. And then this collaboration with the VA kind of blossomed into this becoming a full report as we had more than just a couple people at the Institute looking at it. We had researchers that had time to dedicate at the VA, which was really fun to get to work with them. And I think I sent these slides to Terry, so you'll have them, and the link to the report is in there as well. And I'll toss that in the chat in a moment. But yeah, so I'll get moving here. And I'll first start with just highlighting the key strategies that we identified, and then I'll try and spend most of my time talking about the workforce development stuff and digital skills. So we found 5 key strategies that most states that we found to be, particularly thoughtful in their treatment of veterans were implementing. Those are linking needs assessments to their implementation strategies, that is, connecting an identified need to a planned implementation strategy, pretty simple. Leveraging other state and federal agencies. The VA has a huge number of programs in each state, and they vary sometimes state by state. So that's one thing to navigate, and then sometimes there are specific state agencies, like Virginia has Department of Veterans Services along with the federal office at the VA. So leveraging those resources and just kind of using it as a multiplying effect, because if the broadband office is aware of those resources and the Veterans Affairs and Veteran Services Department knows that people care about getting veterans digital equity services, workforce services, digital skills, upskilling, you're just going to have a much easier time meeting their needs than you would if you're going it alone. We found that they were identifying standout partners outside of government agencies. So there are tons and tons of VSOs, both nationally and sort of more localized organizations. So having a good idea of how those organizations work with each other, what exactly they're providing to veterans is important to meet needs. Next, they designed a workforce strategy for veterans, and they'll talk about that more in depth later. And finally, they prioritized access to healthcare. VA obviously felt very strongly about that, and I honestly learned a ton in working with them on the telehealth issue. So I'll keep moving along and talk about common barriers. These aren't kind of expressly laid out in the report. but in some ways they're the inverse of the recommendations at the end of the report, and we talked about them quite a bit while writing it. So I thought it was worth highlighting. And it's sort of the inverse of that first, well, partly the inverse of that first strategy in connecting the needs assessment to the implementation strategy is that first barrier of some plans tended to group veterans together with other covered populations. And this would go for any covered population that you're looking at. It's easy if there's a lot of intersectionality, like the veteran population in many states skews older, in many states it skews more rural. So it's easy to, in your implementation plan, say, we're going to treat these groups this way. And like the strategies kind of become samey, rather than identifying specific needs for each covered population and then having a specific implementation for each. And obviously, if there are organizations providing support to multiple covered populations, that's fantastic. And that is something that should exist and is a great model. But sort of for planning purposes, we thought it was important to be as specific as possible when dealing with each covered population and not get jumbled together. More generally, outside of planning, sometimes there's a lack of localized support organizations for veterans. And often they're relying really heavily on organizations like the VA that can have resource constraints. So that is a hurdle for many areas that have veterans that have digital divide needs. And then finally, there's a sometimes a lack of wraparound services to address other needs that veterans face, such as housing, healthcare, or financial literacy concerns. And I'll speak really briefly about the telemental health care aspect that I just thought anytime I talk about this report, I have to include this. And I think it ties into the skills because I think one of the first most ready to be realized benefits for a lot of people when becoming more digitally literate is utilizing telehealth services, especially if you're someone who has health issues that could be, taken care of or eased by having access to telehealth. So briefly, I'll just mention these are two studies linked here. I think one by the VA and one not by the VA, could be wrong. So one is first establishing the need for increased mental health services for veterans. And then in that second bullet, speaking about telemental health services being just as effective as in-person mental health services. And that there was a 36% reduction in suicide-related emergency department visits for VA patients who had access to a tablet through a VA program that provides them for free and were utilizing telemental health services. There was a 36% reduction in suicide-related emergency room visits for those participants in that study. And that those two findings in a panel that we had after the release of this report just paired so amazingly with this anecdote from Walter Prescher, who was on the panel. He's an Army vet and a digital navigator in Texas at Easter Seals. He spoke about driving to the VA clinic for his therapy sessions, and he would have these stress triggers while driving because he was so used to scanning the roadway for IEDs during his service. Had he had access to telehealth, he wouldn't have had to go through those stressful moments every time that he was on the way to, receive care to combat those triggers. So that for me was a huge light bulb moment, and I think very powerful, and kind of establishing the need for increased access and skills to use these services. Yeah. So here is the workforce section. List a number of state-specific programs that are highlighted in each of the state plans. The report has many more, perhaps maybe just a few more. But there's a lot more in the report. So there's a whole section dedicated to workforce training strategies. So I won't go through those one by one, but I would like to speak just briefly about highlighting this kind of interesting dichotomy that we found when both reading the reports and then speaking to some officials, that veterans, especially recent service members that are departing their service, leaving the armed forces, are seen as massive assets to the workforce for things like cybersecurity. They, have lots of job training basically that they've received as part of their service, and are assumed to be, a huge, kind of plug and play into the workforce, which in many cases, of course they are. And then there's another, side of that coin where they obviously are viewed as having a massive need, maybe in older veterans who are still looking for work and are long out of the service, don't have as up-to-date job training that they might have had if they were in the service in the past 10 or 15 years. So I think there might be a tendency to think that there's a lower need because of the job training that recent vets often have. But I think what is most important is, regardless of their status as maybe an asset to the workforce, which in many cases they are, there should be a pathway for all veterans, regardless of age and training status, specifically for veterans or whatever covered population you're looking at, to meet their needs specifically, to become trained up and get into the field that they're looking to get into, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's another field that requires a level of digital skills that they don't possess currently. So, and I think many of the plans in the report that we highlight, go about this in pretty impressive ways. And when they get the chance to be implemented, will do a lot of good. So I'll just close with the policy recommendations, which are pretty similar to the key strategies that we had at the beginning of the presentation. But it's to conduct a so this is to recommending strategies to have a successful plan, conducting a comprehensive needs assessment, tailoring digital skills programs and workforce strategies specifically for veterans, partnering with federal and state agencies and community organizations, and investing in underserved areas, particularly those that lack infrastructure access to, so that they're able to have a good home connection. So investing in them, whether that means getting them a home connection that enables them to have quality broadband access, or if that's not possible, investing in the community so that there's a space where they can do that, or if that space already exists, conducting outreach so that they folks know about it and are more ready to use it and use it more often. So there, I'll stop talking at you and hope to have some conversation. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, Reid. I think first we should open it up for questions for Reid specifically, and then we can get into more of a general discussion. Anybody have specific questions or comments?
Hey, Reid.
Hi, George.
Yeah, this is George Hawley, Maryland Department of Labor. The Maryland Department of Labor is formulating a program where we're going to have a cybersecurity virtual hiring event in May or June of this year for the whole state of Maryland. And once I find out the dates, I'll let Terry know so she can let other people know. These are specific needs by employers to try to hire veterans for their needs.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, that's great. So it's the whole fair is for veterans. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's all for veterans itself, and it's going to be a virtual hiring event.
That's fantastic.
And it's all focused specifically on cybersecurity?
Yeah, just cybersecurity
Nice.
or cybersecurity related job announcements.
Sure.
That's important. I think, like I said, that's kind of exactly what I'm saying, where you know that there are lots of qualified folks that are veterans for these positions in cybersecurity, but just saying that and understanding that and then assuming that the job market will take care of it without express effort from Department of Labor and organizations like that, it just doesn't cut it. So that's really great.
Yeah, thanks, George. Let us know. We'll keep it on the announcements. That kind of makes me feel like across the country, as you did this research, was it just super dispersed everywhere like that? Like, like there are lots of good, this is what I was finding, lots of good info, lots of smaller programs, satellite programs all around, but no sort of dedicated path, no mapping of partnerships, or I guess there may be some states that you came across that were a little more coordinated or cohesive than others. Maybe what do you kind of see as, like, from our standpoint, as a bunch of individual programs trying to make a collective impact, where would that energy first, be prioritized?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say that in a lot of places you have a lot of organizations working towards a similar goal, but there's often maybe a lack of centrality to it, where it's hard to know where to start, maybe is a good way of putting it. That for example, there's a program at the VA called the Digital Divide Consult Program. I think that was mentioned in one of the slides, that they will just you go and talk to or I think it's online, they probably do it in person as well. You speak to a representative who walks you through all of the programs, both in your state or where you live and nationally, that can help you get access to internet or get digital skills training. And also workforce opportunities that you're eligible for as a veteran, as a member of any number of assistance designations. So like the FCC Lifeline program, if you're eligible for that, they'll just help you sign up for it. Lifeline isn't directly targeted at veterans, but many veterans are eligible for it. So they'll just sit there with you and help you sign up. If I'm sure that the job fair that George has highlighted, you would hope that a program like that could direct you towards that fair, so that I think the model, a model program is able to, there's an organization that has established trust with the covered population, in this case veterans, that has an intricate knowledge of that local area's services that are available to that individual. So rather than them having to navigate all of these different organizations, maybe they're eligible for, maybe they're not. They know that they have an organization that they have trust in, that they can go to and then get pointed in the right direction. Because I think a lot of it is a trust issue a lot of times, and just being kind of demotivated by, like you said, the disjointedness of programs.
Yeah, and how to find everything in the right spot. But I
Yeah.
guess that's, true of all targeted covered populations, whatever the term is this year, right? Um, that, we know that they have to be very localized, very community place-based. And so we're seeing like programs like ours trying to because we are statewide and we want to support digital navigators, right? We're just trying to create programs that support and help hold up that system so that we can continue to help people thrive, even though, maybe we're not out doing all those things, right? We're sharing information, bringing people together, trying to come up with asset maps and tools that are helpful, I guess, and supportive and can take the burden off each organization and individual entity that needs to provide some kind of digital navigation services. All right. This is so good. I could talk about this forever, but you guys don't want to hear me talk. I'm going to throw these questions in the chat again. I just wanted to ask you to kick it off. Reid, maybe we ask you and then, we can kind of kick it into a conversation.
Yeah.
But in terms of the needs and the specific digital skills and needs and challenges, like what are you seeing? What are the most urgent skill gaps?
Yeah. I think it's hard to say from a workforce perspective. I wouldn't feel comfortable ascribing specific skills.
Mhm.
Um, but
Even if
sort
it's
of,
like general areas or
yeah.
Mhm.
Generally, I think confidence in using the internet in a safe way is kind of in a lot of the research that I've either been involved in or have read. You're never far from um, participants or case study or interviewees mentioning a lack of confidence in using um, the internet because they're worried of things like scams or other cybersecurity concerns. So I think, and valid concerns, obviously, in many cases. So I think it's important as sort of a baseline. It should come right hand in hand with learning to turn on the computer, um, how to, lead a safe online life. And obviously that lots of that is, a bigger question than just teaching someone something. It deals with better regulation on what spam callers and spam emailers are able to do, because even the most digitally literate of us are able to fall for scams. I talked to a robocaller a couple months ago for 10 or 15 minutes before I realized that this isn't legit, and if this goes much further, something I could be out a couple $1,000s, who knows, so
Mhm.
it's I think that is the most pressing skill, one that carries the most weight to me.
Yeah, we see
Just
that
as
too,
much.
the gap. I thought it was interesting that we do have this sort of natural cohort of cybersecurity professionals, but also like this blaring cybersecurity like need, or gap
Right. Yeah.
at the same time. So that's really interesting. But I think that's what we're seeing too, is that there are lots of good programs, and even for some of our, tech educators and our programs are, there's always the gap above or below, like everybody's where they're at on the scale, right? So there might be some really great, like in Utah, for example, there was the remote online initiative, which is a really great, learn how to get a certificate to work remotely in rural areas, and super good program. But the gap is like the X% of people who couldn't who didn't have those very basic foundational skills and confidence to get to that point, right? So
Yeah.
the paths that I want to talk about today with this group, and hopefully people will chime in, I'll shut up, are, where can we partner together to fill that path along the way? Is it, something we can provide very basic foundational skills, and then another entity, maybe goes on, and or even transfers to, say, our tech educators that have more, different skill classes and different levels of stuff, all the way up, to advanced levels of training. I'm just thinking how we can bring out this discussion today and kind of maybe try to identify some of those areas. Or if you have examples too of programs where that's happening, that would be great. So I'm gonna go ahead.
Sorry, you're asking me directly or just the
both, usually
Okay.
you and then the group. I'll do the long silence after you're done, and we'll wait for somebody to talk.
Yeah, I think in terms of partnerships, I think there were several states that stood out. I'm gonna cheat and look at my report here, that I think Kansas was one that was really good for, yes, they had every single covered population. They sort of had, they had their full asset inventory for the entire state. So, hundreds of organizations. And then they had specific, kind of one pagers for each covered population that highlighted the top, 3 to 5 service organizations for that specific covered population. And I think that is a really great way to do it, because it not only signals, to anyone who reads the plan that these are trusted organizations, but it signals probably more internally to folks in the space already that we're going to be reading this document, so maybe not specifically. Yes, and I see that. I will, I'll pop the Kansas plan in the page in the chat in a second here. But it just highlights internally, I think, for government employees or local government employees that might read the plan and, glance through it rather than look at the entire asset inventory, look at the specific covered population service organizations that are, most trusted by the state and likely have a pretty large capacity, and then use them as a starting point, because then obviously they're going to have, a web of partners beyond them. So I think, again, it goes back to the trust thing, that you get people into into an interaction with a trusted partner, and it blossoms from there, hopefully.
Does anybody else want to chime in about digital skill gaps that they're seeing in their community, in their service, their work? Everybody's off camera today, and there's 13 Julie Silvas. That's funny. Give you guys a second.
The biggest thing we're seeing at the American Job Center is a lot of veterans come in and they're afraid of using the computer or don't know how to. The older ones and the younger veterans, they're more computer literate than others. So there's a lot of skill gaps they have to be developed for them to even get used to how to use a computer.
What kind of programs do you refer them to, George?
Mainly, we provide them to training classes within the American Job Center classes. There's classes available at public libraries how to utilize a computer, things like that. We just try to provide them resources. They can get over that barrier.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm from Nebraska, and we work with the American Job Center here in Lincoln. I'm with a nonprofit called Lincoln Literacy. And the skill gap that we're seeing is we primarily work with immigrants and refugees, but also just native born Americans who want to change jobs, and maybe especially if they're in a manual labor job previously, that skills gap of basic typing, basic internet searches, and getting their emails set up are very tangible things that we try and work on to make sure they're able to apply to that job online, get an email back if they have an interview, be able to read it, and then be able to go on and get a job in a different field. And so we spend a lot of time on typing, a lot of time practicing sending emails, and practice having them search for jobs inside of our classroom.
Is that, Abby, is that like one-on-one?
We typically do small group classes, so around like 3 to 7 students. Typically, we are working with adults over the age of 30. We see kind of that scale everywhere of the younger folks have not had kind of that missing skills gap in digital literacy. I think our oldest student we have is 75, and she just wants to learn how to be able to email her grandkids. So even in a less professional sense, just a connectivity for family and friends. Still, can they search the email? Can they maybe use Facebook to navigate and stay connected to their peers? Is another way that we tried to utilize digital literacy beyond workforce.
I love to give this example. When I did my fellowship, one of the other fellows did, she worked with senior populations, and she did a dating site workshop, like how to set up your profile, how to be safe online, and it was extremely popular. So whatever the hook was, right?
Oh, that's fantastic. It's a lot of, especially our older population, sometimes they're not necessarily looking for one specific job skill, but they're looking for also that connectivity of, I want to be learning this with other people who necessarily don't have these skills. And we find that brings people back, even if they're not looking for, I need to learn this skill to be able to get a job.
I love it. Okay, let's see here.
Hi.
Oh, good.
Oh,
There we are. I was like, is it Julie? Who's the other Julie? I don't know. We must have given you a different link. What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Vanessa. I don't even know why I'm Julie. That's
I
crazy.
don't know.
But well, that explains the mystery because I wanted to know how there were so many Julies here too. Um, I'm Vanessa Holloway Truxton. I'm with Manery's Dream Alliance. We are a nonprofit on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and we transform the lives of youth, family, and community members through providing resources, workshops, and development. So one of the things that I run into being the community engagement coordinator is I engage with the community. So I've been engaging with more veterans. And all I know about veterans is like my dad was one. So I'm here to learn and also to listen to the other participants to see what resources they offer. I find that when seeking resources, digital is an issue because of the lack of knowledge of how to use it, but also they've never had to use a computer. And the population of veterans that I come across are the relationships that we have with halfway houses. That are in our community. And a lot of those veterans not only have the digital block in understanding, but they also don't have an understanding of what benefits are offered to them. And they're often told, well, go on the internet. So I want to know how my organization can network with other organizations that serve veterans solely to see how we can collaborate together to address helping veterans on so many levels, and it all comes back to digital.
I'm here. Angela Watkins with Aztec Public Library in Aztec, New Mexico. And we see a lot of, especially with our mid to older people buying devices and not really knowing how to operate them, not knowing how to operate them We do offer computer classes that will help them learn about their devices, as well as provide one-on-one, book a librarian, which is either one-on-one or you can book as a group. We've been doing this for quite some time, and even though we provide these resources, we still see that there's a portion of the community that would rather just do things the old-fashioned way rather than take on a new skill. And especially when it comes to technology, the scare out there of them losing their identity and so forth, that pushes a lot of them away from wanting to learn about technology. And even though they need to know how to access Social Security or any of their medical, in the area we live in, we've got a sound booth, a privacy booth, which allows them to get on for telehealth. And just getting them in there in order to provide that privacy, they have to learn how to work different things. And we see this over and over again. The needs, not the not the wants, but the needs. They're fighting it tooth and nail, but we are offering all the tools of the trade to be able to help them understand cybersecurity, to help them understand that this is the future. You're going to have to interact with the tools that you need for life skills, and connecting with Social Security, connecting with your employment, learning how to build a resume. We have the devices that they can build their resume, and it can be job specific, but we take over from there and clean it up for them, so it makes them look like geniuses. But it's we're seeing the same thing of the resentment, the fear, and it just gets worse. It's kind of like these advertisements that are saying, if you're diabetic, there's a secret remedy, and you got to try this, and you click on it and it takes you through this long drawn out thing. Well, if they're not tech savvy, they don't understand the language. I mean, it's hard enough for them getting to learn the difference between a right click and a left click, but tossing it out there, we try to simplify things so that they have that opportunity to self-build that they need in order to function properly in the community.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Ashley, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to talk about kind of how we try to promote workforce development, digital skills. I'm from Shaping Our Appalachian Region, or SOAR. We cover 54 counties in Appalachia, Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, and I'm our digital navigator manager. We have a grant through the NDIA digital navigator program, and it's coming to an end. But what we have found, 54 counties is a huge landscape to try to cover. But even if we focused on 5 counties, it's still a lot of land to cover. It's very rural. So I have been going to career centers that are like hubs for several counties and doing workshops and giving people foundational digital skills so they can use North Star to then continue their education independently. And, I would love to be able to teach all the digital skills and do all the workshops myself, but we have too big of an area and a lot of specific needs. North Star isn't perfect, but if you've heard of it, it can be a really great tool, especially for people with low digital literacy skills. And with our device program, we have people learn to use a computer before they earn the device, learn to earn, and we use North Star for that. So they use computer basics, email, internet, Windows 11, and then I let them choose the 5th module. Why are you in this class? Is it to learn more about Microsoft Word or career search skills? They have modules for that. So I really enjoy using North Star to amplify what I can teach and what I can do over a huge land area. So if you don't use North Star, I would definitely look into it. It does tests, it does assessments and lessons. It's very user friendly and it's very affordable. So yeah, totally not sponsored, but we should.
I'm going to say just a quick plug. Like there's a lot of gaps and services that have been requested here in this conversation today that we actually provide through Marylanders Online. So, please, we want to come to your communities. We want to help do tech support. We have our hotline that is open 6 days a week. Anyone can call and get live tech support at that time. We can do one-on-one appointments. We can do all that kind of stuff. The big exciting news for Marylanders Online is our 2.0. It's Monet, I can't remember what it stands for. Marylanders Online Navigation Education Toolkit. There we go. I did it. And that is going to be published through Open Learning. Our College of Information and the Enoch Pratt Free Library have designed this training. So it's 10 modules right now. We're getting ready to prepare 2 additional modules with AI and I think health literacy or something like that. But it is a very robust training program for folks who are going to be providing digital navigation. And it also can be used for people who are new to digital navigation. So it is a training of trainers, but also, designed to train people as we go. So we piloted that with Enoch Pratt Free Library, and now we're getting ready to, the link is right above that, Doris. We're getting ready to do an internal cohort with our current digital navigators who've been doing this job for quite some time. So we feel like we're going to have a lot of lessons learned there. And then it will be available throughout the country. We built this with our ARPA funds, so it'll be free. There will be assessments. We'll be providing ongoing support for practitioners, digital navigators in the state of Maryland through a community of practice moving forward. So what we need is local buy-in. We need those places, those trusted organizations, those communities such as yourselves that need, training for their people who want to do digital navigation, who need resources. We have all the stuff, right? Like we have North Star, we can help you get that. We have Senior Planet. We just need the buy-in at the local level. So a person, right, who wants to take the charge, or an entity who is happy to provide a staff person to go through training and provide services. So just a quick plug for that, just because I feel like we really are here for everyone, and want to keep connecting as much as we can. Let's see, what do we got for time? We got about 10 minutes. Anybody else have questions or conversations they want to bring up?
Actually, if and I don't know if anybody here has thought about this yet. I know some people serve some older folks, but we really hit hard on workforce development, and we are looking into developing AI skills for specific industries within workforce development. So, obviously you can teach somebody how to use ChatGPT, but what industry does that apply to? Or is there an AI software or tool that certain entry-level companies are looking to implement? So that's something that I'm starting to research. So if anybody has any information to share, that would be awesome, because AI it's new, but it's, kind of just all over the place when it comes to workforce of what's expected for people to know. So
yeah, that'd be good inventory to get. I know we're working on using AI to develop digital skills as much as we possibly can, and what those modules look like. But yes, for sure. AI. Okay. Anybody else? We've got a few more minutes, and then I might ask Julie to come on and give you the rundown of everything that's coming up for Marylanders Online and the Maryland Digital Equity Coalition, all the big fun things. Now's the time. I noticed, Naimani, you've been active in the chat. Naimani is one of our tech educators very talented, actually piloted and taught some of the first sessions at Enoch Pratt. And our tech education team is awesome, and they're placed throughout the state of Maryland. So they're always interested in connecting and doing more with programs. And George, I'm going to follow up with you and Marylanders Online, and I'll make sure to invite Neimani to that meeting as well. All right, Julie.
My time to shine, or do any of the other Julie Slivkas want to step in, or?
That's gonna be your new band name. The other Julies.
I know. I was joking. I was like, you're welcome to take my identity, but like no givesies backsies, you know. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much
The Julies
for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and drop some links in the chat. If you haven't already, please feel free to sign up for the rest of this grant planning webinar series. You can do that. You can find all of the links right here. We also, coming up on May 2nd, which is somehow right around the corner. Actually, let me finish on this one first. If you don't mind, if you have a minute, please go ahead and complete this survey about today's training or any of the other digital equity grant planning webinars that you've attended. Okay, moving on. On May 2nd, we have our Empowering Health webinar or conference, and that is going to be completely free and completely virtual. We would love if you want to attend. We are going to be talking a lot about health equity, disparities, how we can use, you know, the advances in health technology and even AI to really improve health outcomes across various populations. And to supplement that, we also have the webinar series for that, which is the link that I just chose. We have a lot of webinars coming up. So this one is the conference coming up on May 2nd. And then the one I put in there before is the health webinar series. That's going to be happening Fridays, May 16th to June 27th. And I will go ahead and follow up with the email with all of this information. You saw that I also shared a free webinar. We have 2 opportunities to join coming up in May. I think it's May 6th and May 13th. So feel free to join us there. We are able to offer our webinars with interpretation. So we have a Farsi population in one of our counties and they would like to learn a little bit more about, you know, anti-scam procedures. So we are going to be able to offer that, but we're also welcoming other languages and just really working to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our communities. So if you're interested in partnering with us, you'll have Terry and my email. Please feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear about what you're doing, how we can best support you and your communities, and hopefully explore partnerships as we kind of, you know, join forces and keep going in this mission together. So thanks again for being here. We hope to see you at another one of our events soon.
Thanks, Julie. So much to go through. So we got so many requests for topics for our Empowering Health Conference. So we had to make a whole separate webinar series just to fill that need. So it's pretty exciting. I guess I had a question. Maybe this is a good one for Reid and George as we close out. We talked a lot about like the state institutions and then, you know, building those trusted organizations and kind of going down, you know, into those, you know, really trusted community level programs. How can we flip that a little bit so that like I'm say Ashley or, you know, maybe Bori or somebody in a smaller program that's more localized, and I want to connect to, you know, those bigger resources and create some of those partnerships. Like what are those recommendations? Like I know we talk a lot about, you know, porch sitting and getting to know those people. But how can somebody in a community who needs that support reach out and find and connect to that ecosystem? And maybe George knows, like, how can we connect with your office, you know, or through partners, or, you know, Reid, what have you seen in terms of just connecting? Like, is this the best way, like what we're doing right now, or?
Yeah, George, feel free to go ahead if you want to start.
The only thing I was going to suggest, a lot of the organizations that's in different states, you can always coordinate with the American Job Center in your local area, and they can provide you localized support to help you with your program and advertise those to the veterans in the community.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that's probably an underutilized thing for a lot of us. I think it's big, cornerstone organizations like that shouldn't be minimized. So, but yeah, big question. I think where my mind went is a lot of the work that Benton does in terms of kind of state coalitions, and we work in four states now, support digital equity coalitions and broadband access coalitions. And I think, I mean, from our perspective, I don't know if I would say it's the best way. It's hard to say, that we have found the best way to do this kind of stuff. But if you put in the effort to get a bunch of folks working towards a similar goal at different organizations together, I think what we found is those people are going to be opportunistic with each other to move towards that goal. And I don't know if I'm saying a whole lot there other than I think the work is convening. If you're trying to get, in Maryland, if you're trying to get work on getting folks who need workforce training, digital skills training, and you need to figure out a way to coordinate with a number of organizations who provide those services. It's probably not going to be super efficient, and it's going to be opportunistic. There's going to be an opportunity to advance those goals, and the best way to coordinate that opportunism is what you're doing here, what other state-based or local coalitions are doing across the country, and that's just pooling resources and learning about what each other do,
Yeah.
and then connecting the dots. Yeah.
Sometimes it just feels so like, it's just literally me like trying to introduce people to each other.
I know. And
Like,
unfortunately, we haven't found much of a different strategy.
yeah. Well, we have about 2 minutes if anybody has another topic they want to talk about or bring any wrapping final thoughts. Thank you so much, Reid. I appreciate it so much. Such a good report, all the different Benton. It's a staple in my reading week.
Sign up for headlines, everyone.
Yay. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. If you're interested, is that the daily or yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Happy to hang on if anybody wants to chat. But thank you for joining us today. Keep following our newsletters. We're tracking the state capacity grant process very closely. We're trying to get these in and everyone talking well in advance of that release, which is coming. So keep up the good networking and the good work. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Mm.
Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was good. Really good. Say goodbye to all the Julies.